right? So why ethics in politics is very important? There is a direct question. Ethics in public life, the international lessons we can learn, ethical framework for ministers, right? Code of conduct for ministers, what is office of profit, and criminalization of politics. Okay, these are the important things we can or we need to learn. Then code of ethics for regulator and judiciary, this comes later. So till here, including the criminalization of politics and why it is important for the ministers is a very, very important lesson we have to remember. As we have discussed multiple times, as all of you know, the most important person in the society is a politician, because Yatha Raja Tada Praja is the idiom, right? So when someone is given a responsibility to take care of the people, right? So he has to be more ethical. That is what is our understanding is, right? So you don't have to worry about what I'm going to show you, but understand the most important lesson. If you can think about it, okay, there are so many lessons we can learn from this particular topic. The most important one being trusteeship. All of you know Gandhiji's trusteeship concept, right? So what is trusteeship? Holding assets on behalf of others is trusteeship. So how is trusteeship and democracy are interlinked? Wealthy are just the trustee of resources, okay, holding assets on behalf, okay. So how can we link democracy and trusteeship? Public representative are the trustees of common man, okay, but they, don't you think they work for the common man? So politician one, executive one. In democracy, people are responsible, people in power are responsible to the common man, okay. So that is one way to understand, definitely. So our common understanding is what, but votes are given on the basis of trust, okay, right? So again, votes are probably our opinions, yeah, in a way trust, definitely acceptable statement. So please remember, we the people of the country give the power through constitution, and constitution empowers these people, right? Okay, so in that particular sense, they are what we call as responsible for public interest, right? So the most important thing is public interest. So directly they are not responsible for us, they are responsible for the maximization of the welfare. So individually they are not responsible to you and I, but collectively for us they are responsible. So this public interest is what leads to more responsibility. So because of this obligation, they are more responsible to we the people. So these people are trustees of our trust, of our faith in getting public services. So what do we expect from governments? We expect from government is public services. So we cannot do everything. So we have elected certain people and they have to do the things that they are supposed to do. But because they have such enormous discretionary powers, okay, the term here is discretionary power, right? They have a lot of moral obligation to make sure that each and every resource they spend is used in effective and efficient fashion, right? And it is not used for their own personal interest. So conflict of interest actually arises more in case of a politician rather than in a case of bureaucrat, because politicians have a lot of freedom and there is no framework. For example, in India, we don't have a code of ethics, but we have code of conduct for a politician, right? So when you don't have a code of ethics, so you have a lot of gray area. When politician one have a lot of gray area or ambiguity to make a choice, right? There will always be some personal and professional conflicts of interest. Let's say, for example, I'm the prime minister of the country and I'm also the leader of the largest party. So I have to make sure my party is winning, and at the same time I have to do the governance. So where do I draw that line, and how not to use government services for my party's promotion? For example, if you see in Andhra Pradesh and certain states in India, there is this maternal schemes, maternal ICDS schemes, right? To promote the institutional deliveries. So the kits that are given to the women during the time of pregnancies, during the time of delivery, are given in the political party's color, like pink in Telangana or yellow in Andhra Pradesh. So how do I differentiate between the public interest and my party's interest and my personal interest? So it's a very, very tricky line, right? So in such situations, the public interest should be the paramount, not my own personal choices. So because I have such huge freedom, my moral value should be paramount. This is what we have established in earlier classes also, right? So so how do I as a citizen of the country know that a particular politician is being more ethical? So because this chapter, as I told you, is about public services, right? In public life, most important people we see in public life, one is politician, the other one is bureaucrat. So for bureaucrat, code of conduct is there. He has rules and regulations to bind him. So even though he can play in his own discretion, but he is not totally free like a politician. Politicians have lots and lots of freedom because they are the rule makers, right? Because they are the rule makers. Who makes the rules for them?
Yeah, just now. Yeah.
Deepthi, muting will be helpful.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
No problem. Yes. So that is going to be recorded forever. Okay, fine. So coding it, right. So who will frame the boundaries for the politicians? I hope all of you are following till now. For a bureaucrat, we have rules and regulations, but for politicians, we don't have any framework. And sometimes what happens is, if we put a framework, a code of ethics, right? If you put a code of ethics for the politician, so he may not be able to work freely. So that is also a problem, right? But code of conduct is more like a guidelines, just like the code of conduct. Say during the elections, we have model code of conduct, right? So conducts are more like guidelines which are negative in nature. That means they are more like a not to do list or a restrictive list. As a minister, you should not have shares in Reliance or some other company. Why? Because there will be a conflict of interest. If your son have crores and crores of worth of shares in Reliance Industries and you are giving government contracts to Reliance, it appears like there is a conflict of interest. So code of conduct will tell you what not to do as a minister, right? Whereas code of ethics will try to uphold high moral standards and values from you, right? But again, as we have discussed in earlier first classes also, when you are personally very strong, when you are anchored in ethics, you don't need any set of new rules because you are by default a virtuous person. So virtue ethics plays a huge role in promoting good leadership. Isn't it welfare maximization already a framework for politicians? That is what, right? Welfare maximization. For me, let's say welfare maximization is this box. Okay. For him, this is the box, right? Say, for example, there is a lot of moral pressure on the present government right now. People are blaming the present government that, during the time of Corona, you were going for political rallies, right? So is it fair to blame them? So how do we draw that? Because all these things are subjective terms. Welfare maximization is again a subjective term, right? I'm providing oxygen, I'm providing vaccination. What else do you want me to do? Can be one argument. But at the same time, if I have high moral standards, probably I will do things in a different fashion, right? So see, being a politician is a very, very difficult job because you are not a single person, right? You have a lot of responsibilities. For example, you have responsibility towards your political party, you have responsibility towards your government, probably you have responsibility to your own religion, your society, culture, family, personal interest. There are a lot of things that are to be considered. Then you have to manage the bureaucracy, because bureaucracy have a mind of its own. Instead of being an instrument, it is an institution, right? So you need to manage that. You need to manage politics. You need to manage the governance. Then your probably religion is a very strong determinant in uh, uh, a life of a politician. Again, think of present contemporary examples, not the old examples. Kumbh Mela is a very auspicious and a religious activity for Hindus, right? In a Hindu majoritarian country, if you're not allowing Kumbh Mela, so you have to take a ethical decision, right? What is the ethical decision involved? To hold the faith and religious beliefs versus life, right? Could it have been managed better? There is always scope for improvement, so that is a subjective discussion again. But if I'm a politician, what should be my decision? What will you do? See, this is the exact line we are discussing from the syllabus copy: public civil services values and ethics in public administration, status and problems, ethical concerns and dilemmas in government and private institutions. For example, you can take one more contemporary dilemma. Vaccine is given till now at a certain price and of a different price for a different, for the central government. But now vaccine is given to the states at a different price, right? So what is the ethical concern or dilemma there? So what should I do? Should I give vaccine to everyone for free, or should I, let the private parties make some profit out of it? Conducting without people, but without people, how can we conduct Kumbh Mela? Kumbh Mela cannot conduct on its own, right? It's not. At least with some restrictions. That is again, that is the basic argument, right? You are allowing X, but you are not allowing Y. Both X and Y are Hindus. Who decides? I doubt if it is holding. It was a really ethical dilemma for the decision maker. Okay, but that is what I'm telling you, right? It's very easy for us to say, but given my information status, right? Given my cultural settings, given my religious influence. So I'm not thinking only as a welfare maximizer. I'm also thinking like a politician at the same time as a human being. I will bring in my own stereotypes and prejudices. I will bring in my own faith, right? I'm also thinking like a politician for my votes and for my party's sake. Then I'm also thinking as a government. First, welfare maximization, right? So when I do all these things, so the decisions may not be black and white. They are always gray. So what if there was no second wave? Like hypothetically, it did not hit India, then it would have been white. Because people are dying, we are calling it as black. See, again, in hindsight, I'm just giving you, like, I'm not justifying that particular decision. I'm just giving an example of a contemporary thing in nature. Like, we could have done better, probably yes. What can be done? So as a politician, how do I decide all these things? So the same country, when Prime Minister was promoting vaccine Maitri, right? Because we are a scientifically advanced nation, we are the pharmacy of the world, we are exporting vaccine, right? So that is also a governance decision. Exporting vaccine during a time of pandemic is a governance decision for the nation, because it promoted the soft power. That is what we have learned. All the SAARC countries except Pakistan have taken the vaccine, so that promoted the soft power. We are again good friends with everything. So that was a calculated risk we have taken, and it paid off in international relations. But when the same thing backfired in governance part by second wave, we are having vaccine shortage. So when we are having vaccine shortage, okay, so this was okay, this is bad. I didn't see it such far. So on the day, with my limited knowledge, I couldn't see this happening because nobody saw this coming. Probably we could have prepared better, right? So this is just perspectives. Again, you don't have to worry about it, because as I told you, there are no direct questions in the ethics paper specifically from this particular topic. But knowing why a politician or politicians are important for the society, because they control the bureaucracy. So the questions are more or less about bureaucrats. So you are the most ethical person on the planet, but your boss is not, then there is nothing that you are going to do. Okay, so you can be ethical, but you are bounded by the rationality of your boss or limited by the rules and regulations. You have to obey his order no matter what, right? Then the outcomes may not be as you have desired. So that is where your emotional intelligence, attitude comes into the picture, how you persuade your boss to do the right thing. So all those things are different. Clear? Now, coming back to the original topic, politicians are the lawmakers themselves. They create their own boundaries. So what should be those boundaries, right? So how do we codify ethical norms? That is one important thing. Which ethical norms should be codified to bind the politician? Let's say in parliament, okay, I'm passing a bill knowing very well that it is going to give 60% reservation, right? Knowing very well that is going to get 60% reservation. But as all of you know, Supreme Court says the upper limit is 50%, and Supreme Court will strike off this particular bill. But why did I do this? I did this because I wanted to appease certain sections of the society, right? So is it a ethical process of the government, of the politicians, knowing very well that what they are going to do is not going to stand the judicial scrutiny? But again, it's nobody's case to argue that they don't have the power to do what they did. It's a two-way road. So how do we draw such lines, right? Next, and the most famous questions come from this area, which is known as public interest and private interest. So if a question ever comes, or if ethics case study comes, this will be the most interesting area to attend to. Can you think of any contemporary example of public interest and private interest? So how price of vaccine, public interest versus personal gain, who is gaining? Serum Institute is gaining. You mean private okay, my bad. So now I understand. So here the conflict of minister himself, his life as a public servant and his personal gain. So minister as a public servant versus minister as a personal gain. So in that sense, private versus personal. Minister as a public servant, so he's a minister. At the same time, personal gain. Anil Deshmukh. Using the home minister power for personal gains. Good example. See, you can see a lot of examples in the newspapers, right? Minister is having a disproportionate asset. A lot of corruption is having. COVID. Karnataka minister taking COVID job at home. Okay. University status to colleges of Mallareddy. Okay, who is minister? A very good example, Pujari. So right. Chakri, right? Okay. So I mean, yeah, exactly. You can think of 10 examples. So even Amit Shah was criticized that his son got the BCCA status, but again, it's a subjective argument. So if you are in a position of public service and you are taking the advantage of that, then almost all the corruption cases are linked to that same example. You are benefiting your family members. Here, your assets are increasing over year on year. So all these things will tell you that, definitely you have misused your power and position. Now, why ethics of a politician or ethics in politics is a very important thing? Because the two important things you have to remember is commission and omission. Though Ramana's case is closed, can we quote it, sir? Again, it's not conclusive, right? I mean, though there is evidence, there is no official judgment or pronouncement on the same. Don't worry, we can find hundreds of examples. Almost all the public offices have tons and tons of cases, right? So generally speaking, a politician or a government or a minister can do two things. One is commission and the other one is omission. So both of them can lead to lot of damage or increase value of constitutional principles. Yes or no? Just like you are saying, Hare Krishna, if the Chief Justice designate has a corruption case, if he gives a judgment on corruption, or if he gives a clean sheet to a particular person, we definitely can understand, we don't trust it. He may have given a very bona fide judgment. Okay, still there will always be suspicion, right? So it is not at all acceptable for a public servant to have even a suspicion or to give even a suspicion. In this case, the politician, see, everything revolves around politics in India, right? um, Politicization of bureaucracy, politicization of judiciary. So everything stems from politics. So if politics is clean, bureaucracy will work efficiently, judiciary will work freely, right? The institutional autonomy will be maintained. For example, the Election Commission of India, who retired recently, he didn't have a problem allowing the election campaigning. He didn't even say the word social distancing in entire campaigning, right? So he was least bothered about it. So yes, definitely there is no doubt of conducting public elections. So today there is a very idiotic article by Surjit Balla in Indian Express, right? He was arguing that armchair experts said that Kumbh Mela and election didn't increase the COVID spread, but empirical data shows 1500% increase of cases are there in West Bengal in these last 15 days because of election campaigning. So facts don't lie, right? So 1500% cannot be manufactured. You have to be really blind not to see there is a correlation between election campaigning and the COVID spread. But again, it's not about the parties, right? Every political party has done the same thing. The most important lesson here is, so even if there is a bona fide interest to conduct the election of the election commissioner, because his activities look suspicious, there is a scope for me or anyone to criticize that he is working towards or for a political party, right? So at the end of the day, politicians, political parties, civil servants, government, or anyone who takes the taxpayers' money have to work for the taxpayers. If their interest is not valued or given priority, automatically it will lead to a lot of problems in the future. So a politician can always have two choices, whether he can do something which is commission or whether he can skip something that is omission. Both of them will decrease the constitutional values or increase the constitutional values. So how do they conduct themselves is the most important thing, right? And one term we need to remember is ethical capital. So let's say Prime Minister Modi stood on a dais and said, I'm going to introduce a black money bill, right? So there is a lot of respect towards that particular decision, and people will accept the hardships. For example, during demonetization, people faced untold hardships, but still they gave him extra majority in comparison to the last time. Why? Because there is ethical capital involved in his decision. So he is personally uncorruptible, right? He's very clean in relation to money, right? So when he says I'm introducing something for black money, he has invested something called as ethical capital. So the more ethical capital a person has, the more the moral authority he can control or use it in the decisions he take. But you can see the same prime minister during the West Bengal rally, as earlier as last 4 or 5 days, he mentioned a line, I have never seen such huge crowds, and that line is criticized heavily from all the quarters. So because money wise you are clean, you can promote you can promote clean governance, it is accepted. But when people are dying, you cannot encourage huge crowds to gather. So the ethical capital dwindled there, or it shrunk to a certain amount of percentage because you are taking a wrong decision using your personal charisma or whatever it is, right? So only when a politician have a lot of ethical capital, let's say Aam Aadmi Party, when Aam Aadmi Party came into power, it has a lot of ethical capital because Arvind Kejriwal is also very clean, right? He has a clean perception and he gave tickets to all the educated people. So he tried to create something new. And his campaign entirely was created out of this anti-corruption movement by Anna Hazare. So he brought a lot of ethical capital into the politics. So when Arvind Kejriwal is considered to be very ethical or honest, obviously his decisions or his implementations will be on a whole different level. But the moment you start, let's say Robert Vadra or someone will come and say, for example, the CM of Andhra Pradesh, if he says we are going to introduce anti-corruption bill and such statements, it doesn't have the same ethical ring to it. So there is no ethical capital for a convicted or accused criminal. You get the point, right? So the more ethical capital gets eroded, the less and less impact it will make on the society. So that is why politicians are supposed to be clean. The recent Jharkhand Morcha example, where they have disclosed the electoral funding, it will bring some ethical capital to that political party. If, let's say, the same thing is done by the BJP party, then automatically the respect for that political party will increase, right? It's nobody's case to argue that they are doing some illegal activity by not disclosing the money or the amount they are receiving. It's not the case. The thing is, what do you have to lose if you announce? So the more transparent the party, the more ethical capital, the more stronger the implementation of decisions, right? Just think about it. You cannot ask your own bureaucrats when your own cabinet is doing a lot of corruption. Obviously bureaucracy will also be corrupt. So when you're about to preach to the bureaucracy, if someone stands up and says, sir, what about your own cabinet ministers, then you don't have any answer, right? Now, but why is ethical capital in India, especially in relation to political parties, coming down drastically? What are the reasons for fall of ethical capital? Here you can bring in a lot of GS2 knowledge. So why do you think political parties are cite some reasons? As I told you, you can bring a lot of GS paper to knowledge here. Young people not joining politics, family politics. So dynasty politics is one thing, okay? Young people not joining. So again, yeah, okay. Lack of intra-party democracy. Good point. Anyhow, I will share the second ARC fourth reported highlighted PDF from the topics we are discussing today. Still, you need to think on your own. Leadership crisis in politics. Leadership, or is it excessive leadership? Dipti? Okay. Personality cult. Again, there is only one leader who can command that term, right? Personality cult. As of now. Criminalization of politics. Very good. Parties not falling under RT. Yes. Impact of previous generation leaders. What do you mean by the last line? the modern day politicians or the young politicians are nothing new from the old generation, right? In my understanding, both are same. They might be using Twitter. That doesn't mean they are any better than the old generations. Not every party has the same leadership quality of leaderships per se, sir. Okay, right? They inspire young generation to undertake unethical decision. Okay, in that sense, I understand. Okay, fine. So, citing GS paper to answer, as all of you know, percentage of criminals in politics is increasing year on year, right? Almost every election, everywhere, ADR releases the data saying this many people are corrupt, this many people are having criminal cases, this many people are having a lot of issues, right? So when criminals enter politics, okay, it is bound that their own ethical standards flow into the system. Right, so this is the single biggest root cause of system is what? System is bureaucracy. So if your own substandard ethical standards are flowing into the system, bureaucracy will also be impacted, or it will be tied. Bureaucracy will be restricted because bureaucracy is responsible to the legislature or the executive, right? So bureaucracy's capacity is limited. So criminalization of politics is the single biggest cancer that we can say is why ethical capital is falling in the country. And ironically, as Mina, as no, I don't think political common people are having apathy towards politics. Common people miss service delivery. See, even now, take your own lifetime examples. Take yesterday's example. If I need an oxygen cylinder, okay, if I need a vaccine, right? I'm not looking towards public service delivery. See, people don't have apathy towards politics. People in India don't have the luxury, or not everyone in India have that luxury to be having apathy towards politics. Most people are influenced by politics, but they don't have the resources. For example, yesterday in Hyderabad, I have seen in Twitter and so many places, I need a vaccine, second dose. Okay, so CoWIN website, the public service delivery system in government of India, is not accepting any new vaccines. But if I have a political connection, I have a high chance of getting a vaccine. If I have money, I have a high chance of getting the vaccine. So what are these connections? These connections are politicians, right? So the worst thing about the criminalization of politics is, because I'm not getting public service delivery, I'm going to someone who can get me things done. And because he is getting things done, even though if he's a criminal, okay, I'm voting for him, right? So that's irony in every level. So if there are good politicians, okay, public service delivery will increase. When public service delivery will increase, I don't need connections, right? Money is already a different thing, but again, to get more money, I need connections, right? So this is what is keeping the criminalization, or criminals are into the politics. For example, if I have to stay in politics, probably I will have to do criminal activities. According to Milan Vaishnav, okay, he wrote a book, When Crime Pays. He says criminals have 3 times more chances of winning an election than a honest person. So your answer that young people are not entering into the politics. I need to have a door, right? You take example of Tejasvi Surya, right? So BJP very generously given him the ticket to enter into politics. Okay, but even he has to play communal card sometimes to stay in the limelight, right? So he is not given the full freedom probably to do only welfare maximization, because the nature of the society is such that it's not one person to be blamed, everybody is involved. So if I have to stay in power, I have to do X and Y, right? So public service delivery is the last thing in the mind of the people when all these things are considered together. It's no single solution. So criminalization of politics has multiple reasons, and it is reinforcing itself. So that cycle has to be broken down. Only then the ethical capital of the country or the politicians will increase. So as long as ethical capital is not appreciated or encouraged or increasing, we don't have a hope that honest politicians can be created, right? The next following step is criminals also bring money. Criminals fund their own elections. That is also a big advantage for the political parties. So as all of you know, there is a cap on individual expenditure, but there is no cap on parties expenditure. So when criminals are given ticket, okay, winnability is very high and they have a high chance of winning the elections. Okay, and the party can spend or the party can distribute the same amount of money elsewhere. So funding of money or funding of elections is one of the biggest unethical practices, because I don't know where the money is coming from, either in kind or cash. There is a lot of moral obligation again here, right? So if I take certain amount of money from, let's say, X, Y, and Z company, automatically in future I have to do something for improving the X, Y, Z and companies welfare. At least they will have some lobbying power, right? So one solution offered to do this is state funding of election by Indrajit Gupta committee. But again, in India, we cannot survive with state funding of election. So that is why the present system is having a lot of issues. Throw to this the electoral bonds, which are providing anonymity. So there is a lot of ethical issues involved in. See, anonymity is a design. It should not be there. It's not a system. Everybody should know who is getting what amount of money and from whom. So this should not be hidden. This design flaw should be removed. So technically speaking, electoral bonds before this didn't had this feature. Electoral bonds introduced this feature. So that is why a case is pending in Supreme Court on the same. Okay. Right. So we have discussed about criminalization of politics, we have discussed about funds, we have discussed about electoral bonds. Basically all these are root causes of ethical problems. And then one more ethical problem is defections. So defections, see, you have to connect all the dots, right? We are still discussing about politician, why a politician has to be ethical, and what are the things that are keeping him away from being ethical. And as you remember, ethics is a very high standard. So morals of a person come from society, culture, religion, family. When these things are strengthened using certain tools, they become ethical standards, right? So if there is a Kumbh Mela, if I'm not allowing Kumbh Mela, can I still be a politician? So that moral standard, that moral strength should be there, and that should be continued to become a ethical standard. So when we are discussing about this, we are discussing about defections, we are discussing about why criminals are entering the parties, why funding is an important mechanism, because if I don't have money, then if I am too honest, then probably I won't get the funding. Other parties which are not so ethical might get all the funding, then I will anyhow lose. So what is harm in bending the rules to a certain extent? So that can be one thought process. So how to fool or how to make sure that there are flaws? One is electoral bonds, right? Then there is kind. As I told you, kind is a very difficult term to explain. I'm giving you my 10 cars or jeeps for a political campaigning. Is it corruption? No. Is it a bribe? No. Is it lobbying? Probably yes, in the future, right? And all of you know, black money, lots and lots of black money in India flows back into the economy during the election time, because elections are anywhere between 85,000 to 95,000 crores affairs. So such huge amount of money which was stored in gold, land, comes back into the economy during the election time. So black money anywhere is also used in election funding, right? Then what were they saying? Yeah, we were discussing about defections, right? We don't have to discuss about anti-defection law, the provisions, but we know tons and tons of cases of are pending throughout India, in every state, in almost every political party. No single political party is immune from defections. In one state, you are being defected, that means you are the victim of defection. In another state, you are encouraging defections. So that is not ethical, right? Because if defections are there, then there is no stability. If there is no stability, that will affect overall governance. So that is also a huge problem, and everything and anything related to defections is a bad thing. And you can see, even after 7 decades of our democracy, we haven't still finalized how to deal with the defections. Though anti-defection law was introduced 3-4 decades ago, we could have perfected it by now, but because of political collusion nexus, it is not happening, right? So to remove defections, or to remove all these issues, ideology of political parties have to be strengthened, right? Like, say for example, if I'm from BJP, I'm from Congress, so my ideology is lifelong BJP or lifelong Congress. One day I'm in BJP, the next day I'm in Congress. It cannot happen, right? It should not happen. So ideology of a political party has to be deeply ingrained. An Election Commission of India even suggested internal elections. Somebody has to work for that political party for, let's say, 10 years or 20 years, right? Only then the political party will give him the ticket. Then his ideology won't change, because he worked for 20 years for the political party. He might win the internal elections and he might stay with the same political party forever. So such kind of internal elections has to be encouraged, right? Because till now, or until recently, even disqualification was not perfected, right? So criminals used to survive. For example, the famous Jayalalitha case, where she survived in the politics for 20 years, even after being convicted. But recently, Supreme Court gave a judgment in Representation of People's Act, right? So where it says anybody who is convicted above the 2 years of time is immediately disqualified, etc. So that's a good move. So Representations of People Act has certain things that are mentioned how you can be disqualified, but defections and disqualifications are not being perfectly implemented in the country, right? So that is one more problem which encourages the unethical behavior. See, this is the crux. If we can never forget why we are discussing. It might sound like a GS2 class, but the crux is all these things are keeping away us away from the ethical standards. Next. Assets. As all of you know, before the election starts, you have to declare or disclose what kind of assets or money you have, either in your own name, your immediate family member's name. But the thing is, we can understand the uber rich are the ones who are actually coming into the elections. So almost 90% of the parliamentarians are crorepati's. So that's a huge number. You can cross compare it with per capita income of the country. Even the political party's amount has to be audited and disclosed to the public, right? That is why they should come under Right to Information Act. So all these are still about politicians and political parties. So it's self-evident because we have discussed all these topics multiple times in GS classes also. This is one more important thing. The Manmohan Singh government, or the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, used a very famous line, coalition dharma. So coalitions, as you can clearly understand, is more about hung parliaments, right? Multiple political parties come together and form the governments. Recently, Mamata Banerjee, if you remember, asked all the political parties in the country to come together to defeat BJP there. So is it because of the welfare of the people of Bengal, or is it your desire to defeat a political party? That is always subjective. So coalitions led to a lot of corruptions. The famous 2G scam, or West Bengal getting more railway lines during the coalition in earlier governments. So all these are various forms of corruptions and unethical practices, right? Just because DMK is a very important partner in the government, if DMK withdraws its support, it will collapse. Manmohan Singh government could not do anything about the 2G scam, knowing very well that there is a scam that is happening under his own nose, right? So coalition dharma is a very, very difficult thing to master, right? So in such situations, what will you prioritize? Whether you will allow the corruption to happen or you will let the government collapse, right? So that is always a very, very important ethical dilemma. As I told you, the last election commissioner of India had some has given some scope of doubt in the minds of the people, which will destroy the institutional integrity. So election commission of India is appointed by the prime minister, right? But if you think carefully, he is not appointed by committee members, like a group of people coming together. That is not happening. So election commission of India being appointed by a certain government in power, he may be biased towards that particular government. Again, I'm not saying it with empirical data, but we are giving that scope for the people to criticize. So how can we remove this scope? Just like the CBC, who is appointed by a group of members, including leader of opposition, appointment of Election Commissioner of India can also be conducted by a committee or a commission, right? So a broad-based committee, including all the at least national parties, let's say leader of opposition or some national parties coming together, some mechanism can be done, like Chief Justice of India, leader of opposition, Speaker of Lok Sabha, or something like that can be arranged, so that when he is appointed, there is no suspicion that he is being appointed for his loyalty towards a political party, because it's very difficult to tell whether a bureaucrat is loyal to a political party or not. Just like Chanakya said, it's very difficult to find whether a fish is drinking the water in the water or not. So it's very difficult to measure the loyalties of any political parties. Okay. And adding to that, so what else are allowing the political parties or politicians to be unethical? The last 2 points is the last 2 points are courts. So there are no fast track courts in the country, right? That is what Chief Justice designate Mr. Ramna is planning to do, to develop more fast track courts for politicians who are accused of criminal cases. So if you remember, there is no time or there is no timeline for anti-defection law or the courts. Let's say there is an election, there is some issue with the election. I have gone to the court saying this particular election should be cancelled. So 3, 4, 5 years down the line, the court will say, yes, the election should be handled. But that person who won the election is still a minister for the last 4 years. So that is totally unacceptable, right? In the same way, anti-defection law doesn't have a time limit. So which is allowing political parties to encourage these unethical practices. When you think of all these things, okay, all these things are interconnected, and I'm not saying politicians are doing them wantedly. You can clearly see, because of all these things, politician is very lucky to get away by not being ethical. There is no incentive for him to be ethical. So the institutional mechanism, the system itself, the red line, let's imagine the red line as a system. The system is providing so many incentives for them to not be ethical, right? And because the system is already set, the young leaders or the young politicians coming now are just you take Jyotiradittya Scindia example. He went to BJP from Congress. He resigned and he joined, I think. But the thing is, because there is no intra-party democracy in Congress, it appears like he defected, right? And every state, whenever there is election, you can see hundreds of MLAs jumping from one boat to another boat without fear and thought process about ideology of that political party. They don't give a damn about the earlier ideology. They can change ideologies just like the color of the party flag, but ideologies are something deeply rooted, right? Yes. So you get a larger picture, right? So I will share one document, that is Code of Conduct for Ministers, both state and center, according to Government of India. You can read it, it's self-explanatory. And at the same time, I will also share the second ARC report, first 47 pages, highlighted part. You can go through that also. If you go through them, it's very static. I don't have to explain to you, but you need to remember why public servants or public service is very important, and why politicians have to be ethical, and what are the things that are keeping them from not being ethical. Now the challenge is to find ethical politicians in spite of all these things. In spite of having all these advantages, are there any politicians, MLAs or MPs in the country who are not abusing, misusing all these privileges, all these luxuries? Because it's such a gray area. It's like a dark gray area. In spite of living in a mud pool, they're still like lotuses. Okay, so finding them is more difficult, and finding them how they kept themselves clean from all this kind of politics is even more important. Clear? Any questions? I'm not sure whether you understood or not, but the summary is this. When you see this particular line, ethics in public administration, so everything is linked to other things. If I have to arrest, let's say, a chief minister of a state, or to impose CBI case, it might have a link towards coalition dharma. Okay, or he might be linked to a politician from my party who is right now an MP in my cabinet. So the past sins will also come to haunt me, right? If I don't do religious things right now, probably at the time of elections, it will cost me. Clear? See, we cannot blame common citizens of the country. We cannot blame IAS officers. We have to blame the entire system. I have created such a comfortable life for myself as a politician that I can do anything and get away with it. So such is the ecosystem I have developed. For example, one of the qualifications or one of the points in disqualifications is if I acquire voluntarily the citizenship of any other country. Okay, so if I'm a member of parliament, if I acquire the citizenship of another country, I can be disqualified, right? So when Vijay Mallya was the member of Rajya Sabha, okay, he acquired British passport. So passports are obviously given to citizens of that country, right? So using his privilege, money, he was able to get away with such a heinous crime, right? And he's still happy somewhere else. So by looking at him, why will anybody have respect towards Rajya Sabha or the politics? Why do I want to enter politics knowing very well it's all about money, right? And if he is a minister, if he tells a bureaucrat what to do, what not to do you think the bureaucrat will be listening to him or respecting his words? There is no ethical capital whatsoever. Are we clear? Okay. So we cannot blame any one person in the country. Everybody is a victim of the system. Prime Minister, Chief Minister, or anyone. He was brought into this system, and the system is already set. To change that system, you have to change a lot of things. Now, looking at the screen you are seeing, okay, if you have to start cleaning the political system in India, where do you start? Which knot has to be untied for the entire system to loosen itself or get straight? What is that one pressure point that you are going to put a hand on? Because for example, Hari Krishna mentioned one thing, that is again family, right? Dynasty politics is a problem. Let's say, you know, almost all the MPs in the country have degrees. If not, they will start their own universities and get a certificate, right? Educated people with low moral qualifications are even more dangerous than uneducated groups. Political parties under RTI, sunset class on defection decisions. Okay, so that is where you want to start. Again, Hare Krishna, I'm talking about the system. Which system, like which systemic change or which structural change do you want to start to clean? Let's say you are a son of an MP. Do you not want to contest in elections? So we cannot start with the politicians, right? Limiting the number of times that a person can hold an office. Okay, very interesting suggestion, Santosh. Intra-party democracy. Okay. Any other? Ethical workshops. Okay. Yes, I understood. So we have to kick the politicians out of the system as soon as possible, so that new blood will keep coming in. Political literacy among the people, which might impact the politicians playing to the gallery of the people. That's a misnomer, Chakri, right? I mean, in my understanding, people are very literate about politicians. They exactly know who is what. Probably it's a public service delivery that they are missing and expecting. Funding mechanism. So we have to pick any one, right? I mean, the most pragmatic for me is RTI for political parties. I will start there because that is the most achievable thing. The rest all are very, very, very difficult to even comprehend. I mean, we can start, we can definitely try, but bringing political parties under RTI is a slow poison. They don't even know what is happening to them. Slowly, it will create a lot of impact. Because if I have to change electoral bonds, again courts, fast track courts, again judiciary has to be understood. RTIs looks to be the most difficult thing, sir. I think they will come sooner than later because nothing else is going to change. No, RTI, they think they can get away with the answers, right? Okay, look, if you introduce RTI, I will give answers according to my own window, then I can get away with it because fast track courts, judiciary is in my pocket. Coalition dharma, not in my hands. Electoral bonds, again, hands of judiciary. Defections, I won't touch. Intra-party democracy is a joke. Disqualifications, no need to change anything. Personally, increasing virtue ethics, that's a very, very difficult task in the present day world. Appointment of Election Commissioner of India, again, that can also be achieved. So RTI and the Election Commission of India can be achieved, right? Dynasty politics are here to stay. So society is not going to change. Culture, religion will only get stronger. We'll see. Let's see if we survive the COVID cases. Okay, it's all about entertaining an idea without accepting it. It's the only intention is to get 140 or 120 in ethics paper, right? So after that, we don't even care. So I will share the PDF. Please do read the 2 PDFs. Only then you will totally understand what we have discussed today, right? So please read the code of conduct that is encouraged for the ministers. It's just 3 pages. You will understand how high the standards are set for the ministers, but in reality, how difficult the things are. Okay.